Since Trump won the election, a lot of Democrats and people on the left have been freaking out and panicking, and a number of them have been asking, how could this have happened? Why? Why did this happen? Why? Videos of people getting emotional and asking that. But I have to say, if you're on the political left, I don't really believe that you want to know why it happened. And the reason I say that is because for the past, 8 years, more or less, you've spent the entire time declaring that anybody who would vote for Trump is a racist and a bigot and a homophobe and a Nazi, and literally a bunch of the political left were calling anybody who votes for Trump those things. That doesn't indicate to me that you actually want to understand these people. Now, I'm not talking about whether you agree with them. I'm just talking about having the intellectual honesty to actually understand their position. And there have been many examples of that. For example, during the COVID catastrophe, there were a whole lot of people on the left declaring that anybody who doesn't want to wear a mask wants grandma to die. They don't care. They're horrible, deplorable, uncaring human beings. And anybody who doesn't want to get injected with a experimental, not really a vaccine, they had to change the definition of vaccine to pretend it is one, that you just don't care. You're callous and horrible. A lot of people on the left wanted to virtue signal way more than they wanted to understand why somebody would have a different opinion than they do. They wanted to just condemn and demonize anybody who didn't agree with them because, hey, if your belief is the right one and the good one, then obviously anybody who disagrees with you is evil and should be silenced and condemned and vilified, like a bunch of Democrats on TV were openly saying we should be shaming anybody who doesn't want to go along with the big pharma pushed agenda. And I saw very little indication that people on the political left even wanted to understand why anybody would disagree with them. No, just write them off as evil and uncaring. Now, you may think, if you're on the political left, that I'm saying all this to sort of rub it in that Trump won. Ha ha, you lost. The libtards lost. Well, no, not at all. In fact, I guarantee that if you're Democrat political left, you have way more in common with Trump supporters than I do. By a lot. And that's why I wanted to make this video. You can look at Trump and the people who voted for him, and you can look at the authoritarian stuff that you're scared he might do. He's going to be a dictator. He's going to be a tyrant. And you can be scared by that, and you can say, that's horrible. We can't let that happen. I'm against that. Good. I'm against that too. But I'm also against the kind of tyranny and control and domination and extortion that you were going to vote for. And here's the problem. While you're being all upset that, oh no, Trump has power, what's going to happen? It's going to be a dictatorship. Why did you vote to have anyone have such power? And did it not occur to you that sooner or later, when you support widespread unlimited authoritarian control in the name of goodness, that power might fall into the hands of somebody you don't like and somebody you don't agree with? Because here's the thing. You want Republicans robbed by way of taxation to fund the things that you think are important. Free healthcare, free college, universal basic income, whatever it might be. And the Republicans want you robbed by way of taxation to fund the things that they want, whether it's a gigantic military or more police state garbage. That's not a fundamental difference. You both agree to the premise of having a gigantic, powerful ruling class that's robbing the hell out of all of us and passing all manner of authoritarian controls. You differ with the horrible Trumpites only in the specifics of who you want robbed and what you want the stolen loot spent on. That's not a principled difference. That's just a preference. You are pro-extortion. The Republicans are pro-extortion. You are pro-authoritarianism. You demonstrated that pretty damn well in COVID when you were condemning people who wanted to leave their houses without the threat of government arresting them or harassing them, who wanted to be able to go to work without being forced to take a jab, who wanted to have bodily autonomy, who believed in it's my body, it's my choice. Does that sound familiar? If you were behind the agendas to push the vaccination on people, whether just peer pressure or coercion, or you're going to get fired if you don't, or you're not allowed to fly unless you wear a mask, and hopefully we can get it so you're not allowed to fly unless you get vaccinated, all the forms of coercion that the left mostly pushed, and Trump pushed it as well, which Republicans seem to forget about, but all that control freak authoritarianism that the left pushed, were you making excuses for it? Because if so, you do not believe my body, my choice. You just believe it's okay if I want to have an abortion. It's not okay if somebody else doesn't want to have an injection. This is the problem with politics. You have been tricked into being so scared of the other side of the political aisle that you don't see that you are their mirror image. The reason a lot of people are voting for Trump is not because they're Nazis. It's not because they're racists and bigots and all the other lame-ass excuses. It's because they're scared of the authoritarian crap that they thought Kamala was going to do, and the authoritarian crap that Biden did do. Now, the people who get elected are mostly puppets of the machine, but I'm not going to get into that. Let's pretend the president actually acts independently and on his own. Most of the people who voted for Trump were voting against authoritarian leftist politics, and they had good reason to. And most of the people voting against Trump were voting against authoritarian conservative politics. Now, whether some of that was imagined and some of it was real, that's beside the point. Most of the people on both sides were so scared of the authoritarianism that they thought the other side was going to bring in and implement that they didn't bother looking at the authoritarianism that they were voting for. If you were voting for Kamala, if you voted for Biden, you are 100% anti-freedom and pro-authoritarian. And if you voted for Trump, you are 100% anti-freedom and pro-authoritarian. The ruling class gives you two choices of authoritarianism, and then two sets of people get super scared about the other one, and both of them vote against freedom and in favor of authoritarianism. Meanwhile, weirdo extremists like myself, I don't want you robbed for anything. I don't want you forced by government to fund anything that you don't want to, whether it's militarized police, whether it's warmongering overseas, whatever it is. I want you to decide what you support with your words, with your wallet. And guess what? I also want that for conservatives. I don't want them forced to fund whatever the agenda this week is of the political left. The difference is, there you are there the Trump supporter is. You're screaming at each other, but you're both pro-extortion and anti-freedom. And you don't recognize that the ruling class is pitting you against each other. Meanwhile, I want freedom for both of you, which neither of you even want. You're not even voting for your own freedom. You're trying to vote against what you think will be the scarier authoritarian monstrosity, but at the same time, you're voting in favor of a very slightly different authoritarian monstrosity. And I do mean very slightly different. Never mind the rhetoric and Trump pretending to be anti-establishment and against the deep state. Both parties are warmongers. Both parties are robbing the hell out of the people as much as they think they can get away with. Both parties are trying to buy the loyalty of the people by giving them stolen loot. Trump was bragging about, I want my name on the checks. Massive socialist handouts, which made the following inflation inevitable. And then Biden continued it to make it worse. They both made that happen. And only a tiny fraction of the population even noticed. Instead, they fell for the divide and conquer tricks, so that if you're on the political left, you're scared out of your mind of what will happen with Trump in power. The same thing that always does. No, he's not suddenly going to be a dictator. No, it's not suddenly going to be the end of the world any more than it would have been if Kamala was elected. It will be the end of more freedom. It will mean more authoritarian domination, more warmongering, either way. And Trump will pretend to be anti-war, and then he increased the bombing and droning before anybody else, or more than anybody else ever had. He pretends to be against socialism and signed off on a massive, the biggest increase in federal spending in the history of the country. Trump signed off on that twice. If you look at the federal budget, it leaps. This one was the last year he was in office. This was the next year. But guess who signs off on the budget for the next year? That was him too. Because the budget is completed and signed off before the end of the year. So 2 flying leaps and increases in federal spending. And instead of you actually listening to your opponents, instead of you wanting to understand why they're just as scared of the crap that you're voting for as you are of the crap they're voting for, you kept falling for the trick. You don't win that game. Republicans don't win that game. It doesn't matter who gets elected. They take turns. Trump, Biden, Trump, who knows? It's going to go back and forth. And the 2 faces of the one ruling class take turns stomping on you and stealing your money and forcibly limiting your choices, your behaviors, what you can do. They are 2 wings of the same bird of prey. They stomp on you, they rob you, and you keep voting for that. And all they have to do to get you to keep doing that, same with the Trump supporters, is make you so scared of the other flavor that you will desperately vote for this flavor of authoritarian domination. You had that for 4 years under Biden. Did it fix anything? No. Trump was in there before. Was it the end of the world? No. Did the federal budget grow? Yep, enormously. Did the warmongering increase? Yep. A lot of Trump supporters like to deny that, but you can look up the statistics. The droning and bombing increased, even over what Bush and Obama and all them did. Do not pretend that you value freedom. So for one of the many posts I've seen from political leftists having panic about this, I saw them saying, "We will not bow," in response to Trump winning. Yes, you will. Either way, you will. If your tyrant had won instead of the Republican tyrant, you would have bowed. You would have paid tribute to them. You would have obeyed their crap. Because that's what voting is. It is accepting the premise that somebody has the right to rule you, and then bickering over which power-happy crook you want ruling you. As much as you don't want that to be Trump, Trump supporters don't want that to be Kamala or Biden or whoever. The only way this ever ends is for both sides to recognize the game is a fraud. It's a lie. It's designed to pit us, all of us, against each other and serve the ruling class. Because here's the thing. If you're about peaceful coexistence, are you incapable, and tolerance, are you incapable of tolerating Christians? Of peacefully coexisting with conservatives? You don't have to like them. You don't have to hang out with them. All that toleration means, all that peaceful coexistence requires, is that you not violently attack the other group. The thing that is making Democrats and Republicans incapable of peaceful coexistence is the political game. Because you feel perfectly justified voting for somebody who's going to force your preferences and values on the other side, while being terrified that the other side is going to vote for somebody who might force their preferences on you. Because you're an absolute hypocrite. Stop playing that game. Stop legitimizing authoritarianism because you're really scared of a slightly different flavor of it. If you actually want to make a difference in the world, voting is not the way to do it, ever. Voting for a new master will get you a new master. And they'll take turns and they'll switch places and whatever. You'll be robbed and stomped on the whole time, and your political opponents will be robbed and stomped on the whole time too. Instead, choose freedom. Now, Republicans think they choose freedom. They don't. Liberals, Democrats, think they choose freedom. They don't. Start by learning what actual freedom looks like. And here's the downside. When you actually advocate freedom, when you actually get a moral philosophical position, then you stop trying to use government to force your opinion on other people, to force them to fund what you want. You allow them the freedom that you want for yourself. And if you actually believe in freedom and bodily autonomy and justice and truth and yada, 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 all the things you say you believe in, all the things the Republicans say they believe in, learn about voluntarism, which is the absence of a ruling class. It is giving up the game. The downside is you don't get to violently dominate your neighbors by way of politics. The upside is they don't get to violently dominate you. So I'm going to end this with a question. If you could be all the way free and not have to be scared of any authoritarian garbage, not have to be scared of a government that forces you to fund things you're against, that imposes laws on you that you think are unfair, would you be willing to not use that same government force against your neighbor? Would you be willing to allow him the same freedom that you want for yourself? Because when humanity gets to that point, people of all different beliefs, all different values, all different preferences, all different interests can peacefully coexist only when they give up the profoundly evil anti-human monstrosity known as government and political power.